In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thanks for listening to the Android Experience podcast. This is a show where we keep you posted on what's new in the world of Google and Android and share our experiences with the platform. This is episode 11 on Wednesday, January 20th, 2016. I'm your host, Patrick Vergadamo, and I'm joined with my co-hosts, Todd Wright and Bill Stebbins.
Hey guys, made it past 10, so we're doing good.
So how's it going, guys? How'd you guys like CES? All the news coming out of it, I guess I should say.
I don't know. I guess if you like webcams in your refrigerator or whatever.
Good old Samsung.
That was pretty awesome.
They're just preparing us for Skynet.
Now, Todd, are you having any problems with the webcam in your refrigerator? Because I saw a dude on the internet that was, and
yeah, how am I supposed to know what to eat if I can't, look at the food in my refrigerator from sitting on my couch?
and use your Amazon Dash to order what you need.
Well, no, that sounds kind of cool. I'm contemplating a couple of those.
But see, you could get away with it. So could I. If you have kids, there's no way in hell I'd trust any of that anywhere in my house if it wasn't under lock and key. Because you just know that one time your kid hits it and keeps hitting it, and it protects you immediately. But if you get to the point where it's done the checkout and sends you the notice of the expedited checkout,
yeah,
it immediately does another one. That's just scary. Either way to empty your bank account. So I guess getting into our usual thing, or what's happening, talking about any high-profile app releases and updates. The first thing we have up is Google Search appears to be rolling out some support for in-app install of Android apps. Apparently, this is an experiment Google is doing which would allow certain people who are part of this experiment to, instead of having links to Android apps, open up the Google Play app, let you do your installs through the Google Search app. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, that sounds kind of interesting. Most of the time when I'm looking for an app, I'm already, in the Play Store, so I don't know. Unless there is an app, I'm searching for something, if I'm searching for naked women or something in Google, and the app pops up, I might like, oh, there's an app for that. Cool. That might be beneficial, but...
I mean, and I guess my bigger thing would be sometimes I'll use Google Search especially on my phone, to just look for stories on certain things if I hear about something or a certain topic. And sometimes with that, you'll find out it'll give you app suggestions. And so instead of having to go back and forth between the Google Play app and the Search app, I mean, to me, that's amazing. I mean, anything that cuts out having to do extra steps, although as a person who's recently played around with an iPhone, I can tell you, at least with Android, the back button's easy to go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess that's what I'm saying. If I'm searching for something, and at that time I'm not searching for an app, and it popped up a suggestion, that might be pretty cool. But if I'm specifically looking for like a Twitter app, I'm usually already in the Play Store at that point. I'm not going to be in the Google search.
yeah, I don't know of a scenario where that would be useful for me. But there are a lot of people that go to Google for everything. I mean, I know I've seen people even go to Google and type in the URL for whatever they're trying to search or whatever they're trying to bring up. Right. So if they wanted to go to yahoo.com, they open google.com and then type that in the search box. I don't know why.
That sounds like something
because they're trained little monkeys.
Yep.
That's how the internets work, right?
Yeah.
My internet's gone, right?
Google tells you to come to here. Basically, you're asking Google for permission to go to a website. You better hope it's one of the top things when you Google search the actual address.
Yeah, some people just don't know. My mom's starting to get into using her computer a little bit more now. She's retired, and it's just amazing to kind of look at her reasoning behind stuff. I was asking her about, to her, she's got email and Facebook and other stuff, but she doesn't realize that that's all coming from the same application.
Yeah. I mean, the only time I find myself accidentally doing the whole thing of Googling an address instead of that is sometimes on mobile, that especially if your keyboard has a .com, it doesn't always register when you're doing it if you're typing real fast, and you end up in Chrome, it'll treat it as a Google search versus actually trying to do an address. And so you'll get sometimes where you'll end up Googling an address instead of actually trying to type in the address. But yeah, I agree with you, Bill. I think it's interesting. So if you're actually looking, or if you're using Google search to find stuff or suggestions or from stories, it's nice you don't have to go to pull up a separate app, which I guess in theory, if it's in app and you don't already have Play open, that would be less things opening as apps using your memory.
Right.
Depending on how it does the in-app. Now, it may just be doing Play Store in the background, for all we know. So the next one, I think you added this one, Bill, about Pocket Cast getting a big update with Marshmallow data sync and better voice controls.
Yes, and this was one that was long overdue, at least in my mind. Whenever and it's not often I'll get a new device now, but being able to just log into my Gmail account and then all my stuff show up, and there's several apps that are starting to use this data sync. Phoenix is one, my Twitter client. So when I log into that, that's important to me because I've got a lot of mute filters and all this other stuff set up. All that already comes back. Well, Pocket Casts, even if you log in with their sync account, it wasn't bringing all the other stuff. Like I've got certain podcasts set to auto download and some notifications set up and things like that. And last time I did it, that didn't work. And I thought, man, Rusty Shelf, you better fix this. And then like 2 days later, there it was.
I mean, that is a big thing. And I mean, Pocket Cast is a big thing a lot of people use for their podcasts, especially on Android. And so anything that makes it easier, especially if you get a new device, that's the one downer to getting a new device, is having to set everything up again. It's both a blessing and a curse.
So I guess my question, Bill, probably for you. So if I was using a different email account to do the actual Pocket Cast sync, do I still use that, or do I need to just use my Gmail, or does it just automatically?
Yeah, there's two different things going on there. So the data sync for like your app backup uses your Gmail account that you install with. The Pocket Cast sync uses whatever account you have set up with them. So that would sync like your playback, like where you stopped playing it back, and stuff like that. So like you can look and see how much data or how much time you've saved by using the faster playback and all that stuff.
Sure.
That didn't carry over if you wiped your device and reinstalled it. Now it will, which is nice because I would accumulate a lot, and not that it really matters, but it's nice to know. Most of my podcasts I listen at 1.3x, and so you can see how much you save there and how much on the skip silence and things like that.
That's interesting. I'm glad you said that. I do. Now some of the other features, like a lot of the playlists, the new playlist that they kind of come out with, like they've got one for new releases. So if you just wanted to see new podcasts, if you were behind, a month or two on podcasts and just wanted to see what was new, you could just click on that and it just give you just your new stuff. A lot of this is really nice. In progress, like sometimes I don't know, like what have I just partially listened to, and you can click that and you can star stuff now, episodes.
Yeah, and for me,
nice features.
The voice controls are really important. I try and walk at least a couple times a day at work. We've got some pedways, like I can walk quite a ways indoors, so I don't have to worry about going outside. And I don't really want to pull my phone out while I'm walking. And with Android Wear, you can actually do the voice control from that. And now they've added more voice control, so you can say play whatever on Pocket Casts, and it'll automatically pull it up and start playing. And then from an Android Wear watch, I can change the volume, skip ahead or whatever.
So we're closer to your phone being Jarvis.
One of my favorite features on Pocket Casts is there's several podcasts I listen to that always have ads or whatever up front, and they're pretty consistently a minute, 2 minutes. You can go in and actually configure each podcast to start playing at a certain time.
That's nice.
So yeah, so like a lot of the Leo Laporte podcasts are like 90 seconds in is when you can really start actually getting to the podcast. I don't want to hear about whatever backup thing he's trying to peddle.
Right.
So you can get all that, and now that all will carry over into the data sync as well. So Pocket Cast is one of those apps that, one of the rare apps that kind of leads on Android. You know, all the new features hit Android first, and all the iOS people whine because they haven't gotten an update since 2014.
I don't know who actually manages the Pocket Cast Twitter account. I don't know if that's Russell or who, but having a good discussion. Little Twitter spat, and a lot of the iOS guys were complaining about the iOS update not being available yet. And it's always good to be able to have one good app, that one good app. So, well, it's better on Android. There's a lot like that now, but
Although it's kind of ironic, Google seems to, in some cases, seems to be the other way, where they're throwing out these innovative things they're testing out on iOS occasionally, and people are like, "What the hell?"
Yeah. Well, Google's just interested in the eyeballs, so.
Yeah, if they can generate ads, they're all for it.
Yep.
So YouTube, there's an update that's add for watched markers. I think you added this one as well, Bill.
Yep, I did, and it was important to me because I watch a lot of YouTube, and I would find myself 5 minutes into a video and be like, "Wait, I've already watched this. I really wish it would tell me."
When did it? Do y'all know when this started?
It was a week ago, maybe.
Right. Because I noticed it the other day, and I'm like, "Oh, well, it says watch." I said, "Well, how come I've never noticed this before?" I said, "I must not really been paying attention or something." So glad to know that I wasn't crazy or
or just
something that was there all along.
Yeah, just Mr. Oblivious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bill. It's good because there's certain ones you'll see it and you're like, no, I've already seen that one. And then in some cases, like, you may want to know it's a watch one because you're trying to remember what one you watched.
Right.
Because you want to see it again or show it to somebody. Easier way to find it.
That is pretty good. Definitely.
Yep. So the more they add, and hopefully, they continue to add stuff to the YouTube app. But I mean, I just, that really was a kind of a super update for me because of that feature of being able to see what I've watched. And that also helps me when I go through my subscriptions, and I can kind of see, well, I'm not watching any videos from whoever this is. I'm going to unsubscribe.
Huh. I mean, yeah, I agree, and it's such a simple little thing, but it has such big consequences. Although I still think my favorite part of YouTube is YouTube Red. I haven't missed any ads whatsoever.
Yeah, I can't say that. I mean, YouTube Red, along with my Play Music family thing, has been just awesome.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It really is.
And I mean, I love the other thing I love is with music and YouTube being both iOS and Android, I can easily go back and forth between my devices and have no problems, which is great. So, our final app-related news: WhatsApp is officially free now.
And Todd officially doesn't give a rat's rear. I guess if I was, had a lot of people that use WhatsApp, I know a lot of people do use it. Maybe it would be better. It's kind of weird. I mean, they used to charge $1 for the yearly fee.
Mm-hmm.
I guess basically to keep, I don't know if that was to keep numbers down or what, but I don't know what they're getting by making it go from a whole buck to free.
Yeah, I don't either, and I don't even use WhatsApp, but I know several people that do and really like it, and thought it was kind of important to, that they did go free, but then what's their business model? I know they've got billions of users, but
you have to replace that revenue somehow.
Right.
Well, I mean, it is Facebook, right?
But I mean, yeah, I never really got into it, so I'm kind of like you, Todd. Who cares? But I mean, if we do have listeners that use it, it is good to know it's free. Yeah. Although I would hope you would realize when they don't bill you, that's probably why. So, kind of moving into our top stories, one I thought was kind of interesting. Samsung is being sued in the Netherlands by a Dutch consumer group before the EU courts for failing to provide update support. I'm good with this because, I mean, we've always complained that carriers and manufacturers intentionally don't provide support, even though they're kind of know that most of the time you're in a 2-year agreement. I could understand if it was because the device just can't support it, but to intentionally do it to kind of push you to buy stuff, yeah, in the U.S. this lawsuit probably wouldn't go anywhere because we like free market. But in the EU, I can see where they're very consumer protectionist. That
Yeah.
I mean, it's BS to intentionally withhold updates to apps. I mean, to devices, just so you can try to force somebody to buy another device. I mean, some things we've seen, they never get an update whatsoever because they fork a special version of something. And if your carrier only carries that specified version, you may never get an update from the get-go. And so it's a shady practice, and here's hoping that consumer group can at least get some change forced.
Yeah.
Let's hope.
Yeah. But you never can. Just gotta be careful from them lawyers, from bloodthirsty lawyers.
Well, I mean, the thing in the U.S., what we would say is, if you really want to force them to change, start buying somebody else's devices.
That's true. That's true.
That's what I did.
I would say with Huawei coming back into the market and everything, into the U.S. coming into the U.S. market, you may actually see some other third parties pushing these ones who got too comfortable owning the market to actually rethink their business strategies.
I think Samsung does need to be knocked down a rung. I mean, they make some really good stuff, but I don't know. They just.
Well, I mean, I would say ever since HTC basically started bombing in the market, Samsung gained all that market share, and they really had nothing to compete against except iPhone. And if you're going to go Android, they were the flashy one everybody had every year with the S models and the Active and the Note. I mean, they pretty much have the market if they want it. That's why I was hoping Lenovo, when taking over Motorola, would kind of push it, and it seems like they're now starting to come into their own. But I'm always happy when we start seeing like Huawei and hopefully Asus and them start pushing more devices out in the U.S. market.
Yeah, and I believe there was several phones at the at CES this year that looked kind of interesting.
Now, what I would think would be interesting is if the federal government here would start looking at the reason why carriers seem to only carry certain brands and don't really allow, especially like Verizon and Sprint, who really get to control what you use.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's got to be some shadiness going behind the scenes where, for like Verizon, you only saw Motorola, you only saw Samsung, and occasionally HTC.
Yeah, they have agreements.
And so, I mean, you don't even have choice from the get-go, so you're even worse off if you want to do it. I mean, it's almost like they want you to go iPhone, which is sad.
Yeah.
So our next big story is, speaking of Lenovo and Google and Lenovo are now teaming to bring the first consumer Project Tango phone to the market. And I think, Bill, you had kind of talked about Project Tango a couple episodes ago.
Yep. So, I mean, it's kind of an interesting concept, this modular phone. I don't know if it'll actually hit the market where you can swap your own stuff out, or if it'll just make it easier for manufacturers to kind of throw something together for you, kind of like Motorola was doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be interesting to see how it kind of plays out.
My guess would be, with it being Lenovo and their biggest section of their business is business market, I could see where businesses who might want to cut costs, especially if it has government contracts or work in government buildings where they don't want cameras, can kind of, like you said, they have a little more control in the manufacturing process by saying, we want to order this, here's the features we want in these phones, and so they can kind of dictate what they have in their phones.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't Project Tango, though, the camera stuff, not the modular?
Maybe you actually may be right. There was the problem with Google is they keep coming up with all of these different
development stuff.
Yeah, and they keep changing names and then send.
I believe it is. I believe.
Yes, it is. It is.
Oh,
It
my
is.
bad.
Yeah, that
It's all right. They do,
Yeah.
like Patrick's saying, they've got so many. I don't even remember what the modular phone stuff is even called.
Oh, wow.
Because they come out with new tests. They have the regular product lines, and then they have these
Project Aura.
things.
Yeah, Project Aura was the blocks.
Sorry, Tango, Aura.
There's like Sky and a couple other ones. I think Sky was the one where they were doing with the balloons that were going to transmit Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
But Tango is the one that uses the vision to detect your position.
Yeah, they need to put that Tango into the Project Aura phones, and then they can just.
Yeah, then you have both the best of both worlds.
Both of them.
But I mean, Aura seems like would be perfect for like a company like Lenovo who does a lot of business contracts and usually has device contracts with most states and federal government. If anybody from Lenovo's hearing, there's your idea to make a lot of money as a business model.
Right, because like you're talking about government. A lot of the governments you can't. A lot of institutions you can't have a camera on a phone. It's not that you can't use it. You can't physically be on the phone, and that would be great for, for a big enterprise reseller like that to be able to say, oh, okay, yeah, that's easy enough.
And kind of talking about Tango, the cool thing what is for most people if they don't remember, it's being developed by a team led by Johnny Lee, who was one of the big contributors for the Kinect for Microsoft. And we all know how well that's turned out for like revolutionizing gaming for like the interactions and things of that sort. So it'll be interesting to see how it's implemented for real world use, I guess we would say. So to kind of where you are, Google Maps I think would be the best thing I could see initially, because if let's say you have a Samsung phone which historically has problems with GPS, if it can use this technology to kind of use visual mapping to figure out where you're at by certain landmarks and things of that sort, that could be really helpful, especially also if you're in the areas like subways and things. If it can like see markers and then update your stuff without having to depend on the GPS where you may not even get a signal, that's a big
I've
thing.
Actually seen someone use the tablet, Project Tango tablet, and one of the things they were looking at using it for, it was really a neat device. One of the things they were looking at for, since it does all the depth perception, they were using it to basically map a three-dimensional image of an object and then taking that object and 3D printing it.
That's interesting. I mean, the other aspects for it too is because it has depth perception and can kind of detect sizes and distance. You could also, if easy real world application I can think of is if you're at the golf course and you need to figure out how far something is, boom, pick up your phone. You don't need to buy a rangefinder that's usually hundreds of bucks by itself. You just use your phone.
Yep.
So I mean, it'll be interesting.
I could see some applications for this also for like visually impaired people to be able to navigate. I mean, just hold your phone out and it'll tell you, turn, object, or maybe it buzzes when you get close to something. That'd be kind of crazy.
Or even incorporating it in the technology into, self-driving cars or something.
Well, the big thing I would think would be cool too is use this along with the other thing that Google's working on, that Project Soli that uses the radar to kind of allow it to pick up minute finger gestures and things, so that if you're using that along with the phone being able to actually kind of view things for itself and use that what it sees to help you, it really would help people with visual impairments, because the phone can kind of use its visual parts under the Tango stuff and then let the person using Soli, by being able to make finger gestures and things of that sort, or even signing for sign language, where that if with Tango and that, you'd be able to sign to your phone, and I mean, without actually having it right in front of you, but let the camera look at what the person's saying and then use the Soli to sign and have your phone pick it up and transfer it like to voice or something for you. There's unlimited potential there.
Minority Report stuff, you'd be like,
yeah. I just say we're getting steps closer to being able to do what I always want, which is the 3D interactive holograms from Iron Man, where he just reaches in and interacts with it.
No, that'd be cool.
We get there, and Jarvis, I'm happy.
Yep.
So Google has also rolled out app promo codes, and we note with that finally.
Finally.
Because one of the things that's been kind of hard for developers is there was no real way to kind of send out promo codes to encourage people to get your app for free or to get certain aspects of it by using promo codes. It was something really kind of missed from the Google Play Store, and Google is finally rolling that out.
Yeah, it's definitely long overdue. I mean, if you're a developer and you wanted to be able to share your app with a reviewer, then there wasn't an easy way to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and this is kind of an extension of what for years we always said too about being able to gift people apps and stuff. Well, then they made it where you could gift the credit for it. Well, eventually we're getting to where it's at least consumer friendly, where you're not buying for yourself, but trying to get someone else to use your product or to give them a product. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those. It seems like it would have been a no-brainer, but I can see where this would be a good nod to app developers, especially those who do like Twitter and things where they'll do contests to try to get people to get hits to their websites or to their social media by giving out a couple free copies of an app. This would be a great way to kind of develop their brand on the Android platform. So, getting to the biggest story from this past month, and we kind of alluded to it at the beginning with CES 2016, we had several stories and products that kind of have been announced that were interesting, at least to me when I originally put them in the show notes, and I'm sure you guys, because they're still there, you found them somewhat interesting as well. The first one, I guess, kind of, because you guys both have the Nexus 6P, I guess first and foremost, have either of you had any problems with your Nexus 6P?
I have had 0 issues out of my 6P.
Biggest piece of crap I've ever used. Ever.
Garbage.
No, I've not had. I mean, yeah, I occasionally have like, okay, if I'm going to be a big whiner, then yeah. Mine was having wake lock issues where I wouldn't go to sleep. And guess what the culprit was? Guess which app?
Facebook.
Facebook.
Thumbs up.
So there you go. That was my issue.
Shocker.
Facebook.
That's your phone trying to tell you something.
The Facebook.
I think there was actually an article on Android Central. I think maybe Russell Holly was the one that wrote it.
Yep.
And that was pretty much the article was, hey, you know what? Your phone will run a lot better if you just, delete Facebook off of it.
Pretty much.
Sad.
I mean, considering half your notifications usually are, somebody did this, somebody liked that. Oh, by the way, it's somebody's birthday.
Yep.
But kind of going back to the Nexus 6P, one of the things that was announced at CES is they're finally bringing to the market a gold-colored Nexus 6P. And so I don't know that I personally want a gold Nexus 6P, but it was one of the things that, if I remember correctly, it was only originally available overseas, I think in Japan or something along those lines. Or China, I guess, actually China with Huawei. And so now they're bringing... Huh?
I was going to say China loves their gold phones, so...
Yeah.
They should have called it the 6B, and that B could have stood for bling.
Bling.
Bling, bling.
Call it the 6D, dollar bill, yo.
Yeah, there you go.
But no, I mean, anything that gives you more options for color, and I mean, we've seen it a lot with the iOS products, the gold and the rose gold. I guess with champagne, I think, is one of the colors. It's often colored when it's not Apple selling it. It became a kind of a big seller, although a lot of times it was because you couldn't get the other color you wanted. And so it's always good, though, when you have more color options, because if you really don't care because you're putting a case on it, more color options mean there's more likely to have something in stock when you're trying to order it.
That's true.
So, I mean, if you want options, Huawei and Google are bringing it to you. If you really want a gold phone, guess what? You can now have it. It can be yours.
Me personally, I don't quite get the gold phone phenomenon.
It is I did notice that somebody called it matte gold, so at least it's not a real shiny type gold.
Yeah.
You really don't like. It doesn't look too bad. I mean, I probably wouldn't kill me if I had that color, but it wouldn't be my first choice for sure. But
I mean,
yeah,
I guess the other thing is
options.
if most people are getting the normal colors, some people just want to get a different color so they know it's their phone.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that that's a problem with the 6P because not as many people are out buying it because it's not usually in the carrier and you're buying it straight from Google full price. So, but again, color, anything that gives you options isn't a bad thing.
That's true.
So Google has also announced at CES that they have brought in additional hardware partners to kind of bring back Android TV and Google Cast, the audio streaming. To me, I think it's a great idea because it shows that more manufacturers are taking on and incorporating this stuff into their products. And I mean, one of the stories, it wasn't Android related, so I didn't really put it in here. What they were talking about, one of the biggest things for CES was Amazon, who wasn't even there, because so many companies have incorporated the technology for their voice responsive speaker system into their devices.
Mm-hmm.
And so Amazon, lots of manufacturers had incorporated that technology that Amazon had patents on into all these other different consumer devices. And so it's kind of interesting. Google's, I guess, seeing that knows, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, they want those ad buys and to be able to get as much data about you as possible. It makes more sense to incorporate, especially the Google Cast stuff, where it kind of knows because it interacts with your mobile devices to know what kind of stuff you're consuming so they can know what to target to you in ads. Just that's more the nefarious kind of looking at it in the bad way. But the good way is it gives you more use for stuff that Android TV, the ideas behind it are great. The idea of casting stuff and streaming stuff from your devices and not even having to use your devices because it's built into stuff, as well as Google Cast being able to more easily stream music to speakers and things of that sort without having to have your device constantly connected via Bluetooth, which a lot of times is very battery draining. Any of those things that can give us more functionality to our other day-to-day life stuff while letting us kind of integrate it into our tech world that we kind of live in, I think it's a good thing. And it kind of shows that Google is at least showing some commitment by reaching out more to manufacturers, and that manufacturers are willing to buy into what Google is trying to push.
Yeah, I can imagine that Sonos is really sweating bullets over this Google Cast stuff.
I think they already are with just the little dongle.
Yeah.
I mean, you buy a $30 dongle versus hundreds of dollars.
Right.
I mean, they have every right to be afraid, and they should be. Well, another thing, we kind of see HTC had somewhat of a resurgence with some different devices at CES, but one of the things that I think is kind of interesting, given stuff you've talked about in the past, Todd, with the VR stuff, is that they have their second generation of VR equipment called the Vive Pre. And so I think the more manufacturers we get out making stuff out there, it's good because one, it does give you more things. You have to be more educated as a consumer to know what's out there, but at the same time, it pushes the market so that everybody has to do better each generation, so that they don't just kind of half-ass it and you get screwed as a consumer. So if they can make this viable, that pushes Samsung, that pushes Facebook with their stuff.
Right.
And so
yeah, the more people you have doing it, the more it will not only get the idea out there to more people, but the more that the features will get developed faster.
Yeah, and the other thing is, being a big fan of Google Cardboard, it's obvious that that's an area for Google to kind of reach out, no matter what your device is, to kind of integrate those features because they're putting it out there for them to use. And so the more this VR stuff develops, to me, I'm kind of excited because it's kind of all the things we thought we would get when I was like a kid, we were looking forward to, and never came along. I mean, not to mention the things we're seeing stories like with VR, like the doctor who used Google Cardboard to kind of view a three-dimensional picture of this kid to be able to save them without getting invasive surgery. I mean, things of that sort.
And like I said, my TV isn't that big. It's like a 40-inch set. But being able to put on that Gear VR and watch Netflix looks like, you're sitting in a theater. It's
Yep.
pretty awesome.
I mean, if nothing else, if you're a person who travels a lot, like flying, it's a great way to kind of zone out of whatever's around you, especially with the smaller seats and crappier atmosphere on a lot of these flights.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that kind of lets you kind of get away without getting away is a good thing. The thing I'm interested in really, though, is the extension of the Google Maps stuff, because I could see that along with, say, like Tango, where especially if you can set up it where your rear camera would actually still be able to access outside. There's so much potential for that with like Google Cardboard and with these VR viewers, or even if it like had its own camera that somehow connected to your phone. There's so much potential for that with like Google Maps, be able to take like a virtual tour of things and things of that sort.
I noticed that was a big thing in CES too, to kind of go with this VR talk. A lot of 3D, or not 3D, but 360 style cameras.
Well, and the other thing, and for Bill, being a person who's getting into drones and stuff, that's a big market for Google Cardboard right now. They're pushing is this idea of first-person FPV viewers instead of buying these expensive things, is to be able to pop your phone in one of these devices and actually be able to control your drone as though it's first-person view.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yep.
Oh wait, here's something important. If anybody has Google Cardboard, the Puppy Bowl will be broadcast in VR. So you'll be able to watch the Puppy Bowl at halftime will be 360.
Nice. So one thing, and this is kind of interesting because it was something I think we had talked about, you and I, Bill, last year, kind of leading into at the end of our simulcast days. Asus had kind of been toning out this idea of the ZenFone Zoom, this camera that was running Android. Kind of, if you think about it, it's the Nokia with the big camera. I forget which model that was, but Android. And so a lot of people who liked Android but liked that idea of the Windows phone had a 32 megapixel camera that was like a mega camera. They announced last year at CES with it's called the ZenFone Zoom, and it was supposed to come out this past year, never came out. Well, they finally announced at CES this year it's coming out about the middle of February. And so for people who, especially parents who really get into photography for their kids, but they want to just use a camera phone, that's what they really want, a good camera. This looks really good, and I mean the specs on it seem pretty good as just a regular phone, but the camera on it is just like amazing. It's huge, but unlike the Nokia where it stuck out a lot, it's more just a big circular camera area on the back of your phone.
I wonder, is that really, I mean, it sounds neat and all, but for 90% of what I take pictures of, my 6P is perfectly great. And I wonder if I would want to carry around a kind of a eyesore like that, if you will.
I'm going to go with, not to be sexist, but most of the market I've seen for these have been moms, because a lot of moms I saw using the Nokia phone, especially after the commercials where it showed them sitting at the back of the room, but still looking. The video was like they were up close without having to kind of fight to get into the shot. And so a lot of moms I know that it's big for them because they want to record everything their kids do. They're usually the ones picking them up for like soccer and stuff. So that's something for them. That's a lot of times one of the more important features of their phone versus apps.
My mom, during Christmas, my parents have always been the type that, they don't want smartphones, they don't do text messages, they don't want any of this stuff. And during Christmas, my mom was like, I think I want a smartphone. And I'm like, what? What do you want a smartphone for? She said, so I can put pictures on Facebook.
Just wait. GoPro and that'll eventually have that just built in.
Yep.
Take a picture. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. If you're a very camera-centric person, I know that's the market they're kind of niching for here. It's going to be running Android and everything, so I guess it's kind of inverse of who was it? Canon, I think, who created the camera it ran Android, but it was more of a point and shoot. Well, this is your phone.
Samsung's done one of those.
Yeah, I know Samsung did, but I thought Canon or somebody created one that it looked like a point and shoot, but it built in
Right.
Android for the touchscreen on the back. So, but I mean, this is kind of the reverse of that. You have a phone that is pushing a lot of point and shoot camera type functionality. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it's more options. If that's what your real area of focus is, and you like Android, this might be a phone for you. Assuming your carrier will actually carry it and support it, because it's Asus. Lenovo kind of was also in the news. They announced what they call a Lenovo Link. It's a 32 gig thumb drive, but it does so much more. And I don't know if you guys had a chance to read the article about this. To me, this is like the dream thumb drive. It has both the USB connector for your phone as well as for your computer, and so you can easily do on-the-go type aspects with this thumb drive. But it also can be used simultaneously to connect your phone to your computer, and they have this virtualization software that lets you actually control the stuff on your phone from your computer and vice versa while it's connected. So it gives you an ability to kind of test things out, or if you want to record stuff, and it basically lets you virtualize your phone to your computer using the thumb drive. Everything's housed on the thumb drive. So to me, there's a lot of potential there as a way to kind of use it as a dock to dock your phone to your computer, transfer your data, but also use it to actually interact and do stuff. Like if you want to do app reviews and stuff, I could see that becoming a big thing. It has very good potential.
Will it show you what's in your refrigerator so you can see what's spoiled?
No, but your phone might be able to link and you can pull it up on your computer.
Okay, I'm just checking.
And the good thing was, I think if I remember correctly, it was about $40, which, I mean, it's a little high for the 32 gig part, but for initial thing and all the other stuff it can do, that's pretty good to have all that functionality in a small thumb drive. So, and my thing is, it's the first iteration of it, so it may have some bugs, but the potential is definitely there. So to me, that was one of the more interesting things I saw from CES.
Sounds cool. I can't say that I use a thumb drive a whole lot anymore, but I think the only time I do is when I share movies with people at work.
I bought one not too long ago. It was a 32 gig, and it was one end was the USB type, Type A, the standard USB to plug in your computer, and the other end was micro SD, so you could put it in your computer and load your files, and then plug the other end into your smartphone, into the micro USB, so that you could download the files at that point.
Yeah, I've got a little small 64 gig one.
Yeah, and then about 3 days after I bought it is when I got my Nexus 6P, so it's not worth anything anymore.
I guess unless you can find a really small micro USB to C adapter, assuming.
Yeah, I've actually got a couple of those coming, but before long you got all these adapters, and it'd be about
it defeats the purpose. Yeah, I mean, although it'll be interesting to see as we see more of these devices, when do we start seeing more USB-C type thumb drives?
I think they'll be coming out soon. I think Type C is here to stay, and it's getting ready to hit in a big way. Especially, like I was saying before the show, I bought a new Asus laptop, and it's got a USB Type C plug-in that's USB. You can do USB 3.1, but it also carries Thunderbolt 3.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that's, I think before long, that's the only connector you'll see on anything, except for maybe Apple or something if they stay with the Lightning cables.
Cool.
Let's see. Oh, I clicked the wrong page thing. So the next story we had from this was Casio kind of going into the Android Wear market, has announced it's a more expensive watch, So I'll tell people up front, it's definitely more expensive than the standard Android Wear watches we've seen because this one's about $500. But what's interesting is Casio has announced a smart outdoor watch, which is interesting if you're a person who does a lot of outdoor camping and things, because you're already used to paying a little more expensive for stuff that's more destruction proof and weatherproof. And what's cool about this smartwatch that they've created, it has two modes. It can either be in your standard mode, which gives you about a day, about 24 to 26 hours of normal Android wear, but it has this outdoor mode, survival mode type thing you can go, which it's more minimalistic, and it supposedly gets you up to around 30 days of a battery life on a charge, so that if you're out in the woods and things of that sort, it can also serve as the normal type outdoor hiking watch and things of that sort, and it's going to have all the functionality that you normally would want outdoors, but it also meets the military specifications for like waterproof and dustproof and things of that sort. So I can see this potential there. In fact, it could become a new big thing for outdoor people. A lot of them buy, what is it, Sunco or something, I believe is the name of it. It's the ones the military uses a lot because it has all the functionality. This would be an interesting device that I could see the military picking up on it, but if you're a big person who camps and hikes a lot, could be the Android device, Android smartwatch for you, so that you get kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah, a lot of people are starting to do this rugged type device for Android Wear.
And I just think it's kind of funny because, I mean, we were used to like your phone device having like the battery save mode, which would get you a couple hours extra, but to be able to flip it into outdoor mode and get 30 days, pretty nice. So if you get lost, you don't have to worry about not being able to tell the time and the basic compass features and stuff. And kind of the last thing we saw several, kind of taking a page from all the hardware partners for Android TV and Google Cast, we saw several different companies, Pioneer, Kenwood, and a couple other ones coming out with Android Auto products and announcing that they're going to be really supporting this in the future. And so we've talked about this in the past about the idea you want in your vehicle to have your support for Android Auto, but you had lots of manufacturers coming out with support, specifically making it so that your device, it can connect to it wirelessly, and then whatever, use your device to, if you say you're using Google Maps, to have it project on your radio screen and give you basically navigation, but using Google Maps instead of this third-party Navient or whatever else a lot of these companies were originally using. So we'll see more third-party stuff. I mean, obviously these aren't the car manufacturers, but a lot of people nowadays I've noticed, because if you want what you want with car audio, a lot of times you'll just get the basic stuff from your dealer and then go in and immediately swap out with whatever you want. And if Pioneer was the one I'm thinking about getting, but I'm really going to look at these other ones because I want to replace the radio that's in my F-150 with something that has full Android Auto functionality. Because to me, that's more important than using satellite radio that I haven't had active in 5 years, or 6 CD disc changer that does the MP3s. Thank you, Google Music. So it'll be interesting. I think the biggest thing we saw from this is third-party support for Google is getting stronger than it's ever been. So for Android users out there, there's hope.
I still wish the manufacturers would just give us a screen to hook up to.
Yeah.
I mean,
some of this, what they were talking about with the Android Auto, is that your phone will essentially become, your radio will essentially become kind of that. It has some standalone features in case you don't have your phone set up or whatever, but that essentially the screens would become subservient to your phone. Is kind of the functionality they were kind of talking about, is their concept of these third-party radios essentially becoming subservient for whatever apps you're using on your phone.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Wait until you start seeing the people watching movies on their way to work.
Well, I mean, right now, a lot of that stuff is locked down anyway, as well it should be in the regular entertainment system like my Ford Sync. You can't watch a movie or do anything like that while you're driving. Hell, you can't even change some of your phone settings on the screen or do the nav stuff while you're driving.
And a lot of that's because state laws usually restrict what kind of screens and stuff can display in the front seat. So, but I mean, it'll be interesting, especially if they can develop some support for like your car audio systems, where you also tend to. A lot of third-party radios also have like the DVD player system and stuff for like the kids in the back.
Yeah.
If you can integrate that with Android, so like say you're using Showbox or Google Play Movies, and you can push that to the back seat to shut the kids up for your trip, hallelujah, it's worth whatever they want to charge you. I mean, Bill, you can kind of attest to that.
I tell you what, man, you put a tablet or a phone in those kids' hands, they're the best kids ever.
Just hope they don't bite you when you go to take it back.
Or
give you a look.
Age.
It's usually the screaming age.
Yeah.
Or the pout, walk away and pout.
I'm just the worst dad ever. Oh, why can't I have McDonald's?
Until they want something now. Until the next time they want something, then you're the greatest dad ever and they love you.
Best dad ever.
I still love that. I can't remember if it was Facebook or Twitter where you sent the one with the letter from Miranda.
Yeah. It's probably Facebook.
Yeah, because I think somebody sent one of the comments, I think, for your brother or something is, what does she want?
Yeah. And she did. Not dumb.
You raised them right, though.
Yep.
They know their priorities. Sometimes you have to remind them, but yeah. So kind of we don't really have a lot for the buy and sell for this time, but two big ones I figured we can kind of maybe talk a little more about from what we think about it. The first one is HTC is basically rumored, and I figured this one's one we can kind of pontificate on. HTC is rumored to be making not one, but two Nexus devices for Google in this coming year. Doesn't really say whether it's a phone, tablet, although the rumor initially was that it was going to be two different kind of phones because the screens were smaller. I kind of wonder if maybe two devices is a phone and a tablet, since Pixel C didn't really fill that niche this year for the Nexus tablets per se, and so we still have a lot of people now will be getting in the Nexus 9 will be getting a little long in the tooth. Maybe we see some kind of tablet, and it'd be interesting to see if HTC sticks to the type processor they had, or if they switch back to like a Snapdragon. So it'll be interesting. But I guess I want to kind of see, what are your guys' thoughts on the potential of HTC making two Nexus devices this coming year?
I think it'd be kind of cool. I mean, they've done Nexus phones in the past and tablets, and they've usually been pretty good. So I'm all for it. I mean, I don't think I have a certain manufacturer that I like, who makes Nexus phones better than anybody else. LG's made some good ones, and definitely Huawei's made the 6P's good. So I'm all for it.
I like the idea of, HTC, when they first came out with the One series, they were innovative in the idea of the one-piece aluminum phone. It'll be interesting to see hardware-wise what they come up with. Given some of the negativity of their initial issues with the rollout of the Nexus 9, it'll be interesting to see Google how much they've gotten back in Google's good graces to get not one but two devices.
Yeah.
So, but they are the granddaddy of Nexus devices with the Nexus 1. So, what do you think, Bill? You think we might be able to convince Steve to go back to Android? He always said he loved his Nexus 1.
He might. God, who knows? He's kind of fallen out of the tech stuff, and that's what usually happens when people go back to iPhone.
You just kind of use it.
Yeah, but I have a soft spot in my heart for HTC. I love the Nexus 1 as well, and but they've had a lot of, I won't say blunders lately, but they just haven't really hit that spot that everybody was like, wow. The journalists like the One. I can't say that I liked it at all. I didn't like the aluminum body. It was slippery and it was too tall. and there was a lot of other their cameras were horrible, and so they really need to step up their game with regards to that in order to be viable. I mean, when you look, Huawei knocked it out of the park with the 6P, and when you look at what they did, if HTC doesn't up that bar, then they might as well not even make the next Nexus. I mean, I could seriously see myself staying on the 6P if the next Nexus isn't substantially better.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this: it's given where they've gone now, like you said, with all the blunders. It's easy to forget that at the beginning, they were kind of the banner carrier for Android, especially with the Nexus One, the Hero, which was kind of the carrier version of the Nexus One, and the Evo 4G. I mean, who can forget the one with the bigger GBs?
Right.
I mean, those were like home run devices they came up with. It seemed ever since they came out with that, what was it, the Evo 3D or something, that it's just been one thing after another. The 1X was kind of cool because it wasn't true aluminum, but it was that one-piece type construction that was slim and kind of got rid of the fat Android devices. And although it also kind of ushered in more of the idea of no external storage. But I mean, that was great phones. And then you had, what was it, the Epic 4G Touch, I think, or the Evo 4G Touch. The thing they came up with afterwards was the Sprint version of the 1X. They had good phones. I can remember they had just announced them when I went to CTIA in 2012 over in New Orleans. They were nice phones. They had great ideas coming from it, and it's just like they suddenly just dropped off the map. It was like one bad thing after another. So, I mean, if they can kind of bring back the magic of HTC of old, I think it's great for us consumers, especially if with a Nexus device, because that was the thing. Originally, HTC was one of the better ones, especially with the Evo, of providing updates for their phones compared to Samsung and everyone else. Sometimes with Samsung, you weren't even getting a update in the earliest days. But then HTC just kind of dropped off. So it'll be interesting to see if they've gotten back in Google's graces, and maybe this is the year Google finally pulls the trigger and does what they originally wanted to do. Was it's not the Google Nexus devices, it's Nexus brand with many manufacturers doing it.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting.
So the last thing we kind of have, kind of looking at Samsung, kind of taking the brunt of the thing today, Apple kind of gets the negative on this one. They finally got a sales ban against the Samsung on 9 different phones. The irony in this is this ban that they've gotten against the sale of those in the U.S. are for phones that are no longer on sale, including the Galaxy Nexus, the Epic 4G Touch, and that lets you know how far back we're talking. I mean, we're talking back in like the S2 era, the Note 2, the Note. They basically got a sales ban on these things that are 2 and 3 generations old that are no longer really on sale unless you're buying it from a third-party person, which is not going to be covered by this ban. So I guess Apple wins, but what did they really win?
Nothing.
Of course, this is the kind of stuff that gives lawyers bad names because the only ones who win in this are the lawyers. By the time Apple won, they had nothing to show for it other than a bill.
Yeah, that's dumb.
So, well, that was kind of the only thing we had with that. Getting into our picks from the panel, our plus ones and negative ones. Todd, what do you have for us?
Todd had to drop off.
Oh.
But we already talked about his pick, which was Pocket Casts. I think we're all big fans of that app. And we even linked it in the show notes if you want to check it out. I think it's like $5 or something. We kind of already talked about the highs of Pocket Casts and what we really enjoyed. So
yeah, I mean, and which kind of helps, so we don't have to worry about not being able to properly explain why he thinks it's a great pick.
Yeah.
So how about you, Bill?
Well, do you see my white Nexus?
Yes.
Well, I don't know if people pay attention to me on Twitter, but originally I got a charcoal Nexus because I thought the black would look good and kind of hide the visor and blah, blah, blah. And then I started looking at the white one, and I started to really think I really would like a white one. And it was really, I was actually about to just buy a white one and sell my black one or my charcoal one. And then D brand had some skins for, I think it was $13. So this, I mean, if you really look, I mean, you can see the fingerprint scanner is still charcoal. You can't skin that, but everything else is white. It fits very well. I got the Nexus logo in like a brushed titanium with the colored X.
Nice.
The fit on this thing is super, super awesome. It looks just like a white one, except that it's more panda style. So the sides are black, like on the Nexus 5 when you got the white Nexus 5. But I really dig it, and it kind of, it's reminiscent of my Nexus 6, which I was a big fan of in white, and it saved me spending $600 on another phone only to try and flip this one. So thank you, D brand.
That's very nice. I mean, I remember D-brand. That was the big thing when the Nexus 4 first came out. I think I bought like 6 or 7 different backs for it, and I mean, all of them were awesome. I mean, they're a great company. And the idea of debranding, but in this case, one of the big complaints with the 6P was that they wanted that Nexus logo to pop out again, and so that's a great way to do it on the cheap.
Yep, and they've got tons of different colors and skin fabrics. I mean, not fabric, textures. And what I really like is the way that it fits. I mean, it is very, very, very precise. Probably, as precise as anything. So it takes a little bit of know-how to install it, but they've got some great YouTube videos on how to do it. And so I followed that to the T, and it took me probably 30 minutes to install it. And you have to use a hair dryer, but hey, it worked, and it looks amazing.
I was going to say, speaking of panda style, if you keep it long enough, you ought to just give it to Miranda. It'd be appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, she actually has a panda sticker on her phone.
What does she got? The
Moto G.
Yeah, I thought I remember you'd pick those up.
Yeah, so believe it or not, we all have Marshmallow on all of our phones. My daughter's got a Moto X 2014 Pure Edition, and my wife got the 6P for Christmas. And so we're all, when somebody sends me emojis in my family, there's no blanks or X's or anything.
Nice. So how's the wife liking the 6P?
She loves it. She was using a Note 2 a Note 3. I got it from Todd a couple of years ago, and it's been okay. The camera was pretty lacking, and the battery life was decent.
Inconsistent.
Yeah. And she really wanted something that she could take some good pictures with that would last all day. And she was like, I don't know if I want a phone that expensive. Well, we kind of flipped the phones, and I did really well flipping hers on Craigslist. So it cost a couple hundred, probably about $200 to upgrade.
That's not bad. I mean, although the big thing is you make her realize, as of I think last month, there are no 2-year contracts for any of the major carriers, and they're all moving you. The only way you don't pay all of it up front is you're still paying it all. You're just doing the monthly, either Next or the Verizon version or the Sprint version. They're all getting rid of the 2-year contracts and the subsidies. So it's all going to be expensive.
Yeah. So she's kind of with the tech stuff. She's kind of like, no, this is okay. And I'll be like, no, you really need this new one. And she'll be like, okay.
At least she defers to you on that. So, and the good thing though is with the Nexus, it'll last her a lot longer because you'll get the update support, and the quality on these seem good enough that it's one that if she keeps it long enough, even if it becomes where it's harder to flip it, it can be passed down to when the kid's Moto G starts running out.
I mean, for me, it was really just about the updates. I mean, I used to hate that Note 3 because every time I needed to get an update for it, it was a big pain in the ass. And it was never going to get any more updates. And the whole thing was just it was okay a couple years ago. But man, technology's come a long way, especially in the camera department. I mean, she would send me some pictures of the kids at different things, and I'm like, oh my God, did you shake that thing while you because that's what it looked like.
That's hilarious. I mean, and I agree. I mean, I've pretty much told people if you're gonna get a phone, either get a Nexus device or at least the pure experience, or go iPhone. The only way that's the only way we're gonna cure this whole idea of carriers and manufacturers cutting you out of updates. Get around them. Because if you're going to keep your phone for a long time, especially now, if you're going to be doing instead of subsidy, doing like Next or the Verizon payment plans or Sprint payment plans, you need a phone that when you're getting to your 24th payment, you're still getting an update.
Right.
So, I mean, you're stupid if you get like a Samsung that maybe by month 13, you may not get any more updates.
Yep. So my other pick, since Todd's not here, I'll go through this one too. It's called AppLock Fingerprint, and it works with Nexus Imprint. So it's pretty simple. You load it, you set it as a device administrator, and then you can pick which apps require your fingerprint in order to launch them. So
Nice.
If you've got, God, I don't know, if you're some scumbag with Ashley Madison or one of those. You don't want your kids to actually stumble into some pictures or something, then you can actually set that so that you need a fingerprint to get into it.
Nice.
So you can do that for your banking, or it doesn't have to be something nefarious. If you wanted your credit card app or your banking app or something, you didn't want anybody to just be able to get into it, period. You can set that, and it's real simple to set up. The only thing I don't like is it has a banner ad on the when it tells you to scan your finger, and there's not currently a way to pay, an in-app purchase of $1 or something and get rid of that. So I rated 4 stars. It would be 5 stars if there was no banner ad.
I can see that.
Yep.
I mean, I'm kind of curious to see with the fingerprint scanner stuff, as with the Nexus devices being the initial ones putting it out, if that becomes a kind of a standard thing in Android devices, if we start seeing developers do kind of like what they've done on iOS with the Touch ID and start integrating that into the app as a way instead of passwords. Because I know using Touch ID on the iPhone for my bank app with Capital One, it's so much nicer if you want to check your balance real quick, especially if you're stuck like in traffic and it's like stopped at a light or something. You can easily do it. You don't have to text and type and all that stuff for a password. You just tap it real quick. You can see it and just close the app without actually having to type anything in. And so it'll be interesting to see if the developers start developing that functionality into their apps in Android as we start seeing the fingerprint scanning and stuff become more prevalent.
Right.
Because, I mean, usually that's the idea of the Nexus device is that, hey, Samsung, hey, HTC, and your non-Nexus devices, you can use this because it's open source. Add it. So hopefully we'll see it kind of integrated, which will give developers a more ubiquitous experience for people who maybe use both platforms, or if their family uses the same app on different platforms. Because, I mean, to me, using your fingerprint for the biometrics instead of having to type out a password is so nice.
Yeah, it's a game changer in a lot of ways.
So my pick, I didn't really have an Android related pick this time, but it's something I finally gave in and bought Fallout 4. And we were talking about this before the show. I've only played it twice, but both times I've played it, I've ended up playing for like 6 to 8 hours and kind of coming up for air at 2:30 in the morning. If anybody's ever played, especially if you played Fallout 3, Fallout 4 is so much better. I've heard some complaints of people playing like on the PS4, so I can't really speak to that because I'm an Xbox One person, but I've had no problems with it on my Xbox One, and I mean, it's been a great experience. And what's nice is if you buy it now, between now and I think it's February 6th or 8th, Xbox, they're giving you a free digital copy of the 360 version of Fallout 3, which now with the backwards compatibility with the Xbox One, it works on your Xbox One. So you basically get 2 games for the price of one. And I think at one point I found it discounted on Amazon for like $38 or something. So, I mean, you're getting a ridiculous deal at that point.
Yeah, that is crazy.
And so, I mean, it's a great game. It's fun. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily get it and let your kids play it because it's a little graphic, but it's fun. So with that, we'll kind of let everybody know where they can reach us. Todd, anybody wants to be able to reach Todd can find him at Todd, TODDW on Twitter. How about you, Bill?
At Bill Stebbins on Twitter. Easy to find. Pretty easy to listen to.
I definitely say subscribe. He has some really good stuff. Many things I've discovered comes from the Bill Stebbins seal of approval or him posting on Twitter.
That's right.
There's a reason we call him Bill the Internet Stebbins. And for me, you can find me on Twitter at LSU Law 2009. And of course, you can reach all of us through our Twitter at AXP Podcast. We try to respond, as well as Clay Russell for our network. He tries to also help us kind of keep in touch with people through our podcast Twitter handle. And if you have suggestions of things you'd like us to talk about, if you'd like to maybe come on the show, let us know. Send us a thing on Twitter, and we'll see if we can maybe get you on. And with that, so in closing, we'll say you can find us by simply searching for AndroidXperience or TechSide in your podcast client of choice, or you can subscribe to us in iTunes. Soon, hopefully, Google Music. We've set up the stuff so when they actually start that, please take the time to leave us a review and comment. Alternatively, we have a link for our non-iTunes listeners so you can listen to us. You'll see it in our show notes. There's a link where it says right here. We also have a Patreon page. This gives our dedicated and loyal listeners an opportunity to support the podcast for as little as $1 a month. If you'd like to support us, visit the support page at patreon.com/techside and leave us a comment on Twitter at AXP Podcast, or email us at the network at axp@techside.net. You can also check out the website at techside.net/AXP. And also be sure to check out all of our other great podcasts, blogs, photo galleries, and the TechSide store on techside.net. So we thank you all for listening. Goodbye and good night.
Good night.